All right, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening with the great view at the South Beach Yacht Club. Tonight, we've got a great session. So we're joined by three awesome individuals. So without further ado, I'll pass along to get started. If you've got questions, feel free to save them to the end when we have Q&A. With that, I'll pass it to the panelists to introduce themselves.
Very much. And how's it going, everybody? I'm the co-founder and CTO of Delphi, and we've been working on this for about 3 years. We are your living profile. We're a platform that lets you upload your content, and it learns how you think and speak. If LinkedIn is a profile that shows you what you've done, Delphi is a profile that shows you what you know and how you think. So we're opening our free tier, and hopefully everyone here, if you haven't seen it already, you'll get the opportunity to try it out soon.
Hey, yeah. Thanks for coming, everyone. My name's Nick. I'm one of the co-founders of Seam AI. We build sales and marketing agents that help you monitor for in-market buyers and let you run campaigns on them the moment important moments happen. So we like to say that we help the best products in the market win. I think most of this room is engineers, right? Or product teams. So sales and marketing is always a little bit behind the engineering folks. You all have really great systems like observability and monitoring tools like Datadog to help monitor your systems and remediate issues in those systems the moment that they happen. Sales and marketing, we like to solve that problem with bodies. And so you could think of us as like somewhat of a Datadog for sales and marketing to kind of bring them into the new age.
Intros, you're already attacking me.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome, and thanks Avery for bringing us all here. I'm Dave Piskai. I'm head of product at APIsec or APIsec. We build testing programs to uncover unknown risk in applications. We do it through the API layer, and we're approaching it as an aggregator of information because we know that there's tribal knowledge or brains, there's security, there's development. And so bringing all of that understanding together to understand the application in a way that we can actually try to exploit it and try to break in almost like a pen tester or a agentic OffSec team would. So yeah, we're building security for apps.
Thank you, team. And I'm Avery Lewis with the Pinecone team, who has the pleasure of moderating this evening. So folks, I guess to start it off, just a question for each of you. I know you've each been on this journey for about 3 or so years now. How's the infrastructure evolved over time as you've been going through this to support the continued growth you've seen in the platforms?
I think one of the most exciting things that's happened in the last 3 years is the trend towards almost everything being serverless and infinitely scalable. And so there's a couple things. Maybe Pinecone transitioned sometime last year, I think, to being completely serverless. And then you have things like PlanetScale that are basically infinitely scalable. And that combined with things like temporal for being able to program in reactive programming styles almost automatically built in. A lot of what you had to think about in the past to create scalable infrastructure has kind of gone away. And so that has been the thing that I'm the most excited about.
Yeah, I think a lot's changed since we founded the company in 2023. Again, sales and marketing have kind of like lagged behind engineering in a lot of ways from the systems that we built. And when I look at kind of like what's happened in the engineering world, there was kind of these 3 phases. Phase 1 is kind of what we call single shot prompting, where the context windows were really small. Back in 2023, we had like 4,000 tokens with GPT-3. So you were doing a lot of like question and answer work. And it was, really great use cases for that were search and summarization and our world data enrichment. But since then, we've kind of like really got to expand beyond this just like back and forth question answer to, agentic workflows and now like these fully agentic systems. So for us, we've like kind of followed that journey. I think like when we initially started, like it was a lot of ingesting structured data from all of our, go-to-market systems and applying summaries on top of that so that the humans could act on it. Then we kind of moved into this like workflow automation period where, we were automating certain tasks of the sellers and the marketers, but it was really truly just like one LLM step in like a broader, deterministic workflow. And really over the last like couple months, like the model's gotten so good that we've truly started to build agentic style systems. And it's really been exciting to like, have that much change over the last, 72 months, or no, 3 years.
Whatever.
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah, so one of the things that we have is we interact with our customers' applications often. And so we do very small units of work, and then we need to stop and think about it and try to come up with the next strategy. And so we use a lot of state machines in order to do reasoning, because a lot of the work that we do is not just, oh, like what did we do against this application? It's what kinds of flows are people likely to take through the connections of the parameters or whatever it might be in the API. Because when we look at systems from the infrastructure perspective, it's they look very similar. You have these standardizations like REST and GraphQL and all of that. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to go past that and understand logic. Like, not just can somebody do something, should they be able to do that as well? And so in order to actually determine should, because the can is not easy, but it's a little simpler, the should is a little bit more complex. So we have to bring in either humans or other data in the organization. So I would say on our side, we're using a lot of serverless, as you said, state machines like step functions type stuff. And then we're interacting on the back end with agentic systems that think about flows and connections and relationships.
Something I'm curious about is, have you guys found yourself becoming less reliant on state machines over time as the models have gotten better?
You know what? We have a unique problem where the deterministic nature of those state machines is very important to us, because as you're advising an organization to activate an engineering resource to go fix something, you have to have extremely high confidence in that. And so what we're still trying to figure out is, how do you drive that predictability in the model side enough that we're not creating a bunch of noise? Because historically, everybody talks about the noise and security and how it wastes time in the organization. So maybe if you've got tips on how we can shore that up a little bit, we'd love to hear it.
The reason I asked is because I totally agree with Nick. One of the things that's happened in the last couple of years is, and I recommend everyone in this room go and read this brief essay that was written by Richard Sutton in 2019 called The Bitter Lesson. And you may have even seen people tweet about it or talk about it a lot recently, because basically what it says is that anytime anyone has tried to use AI/ML concepts to solve some sort of problem, they start off by trying to imbue the human-based opinions about how they think the thing should happen. So one of the examples is when they started off trying to solve how to become really good at chess with ML. They thought, how we study the way grandmasters do it. Mm-hmm. And then what they found out is, actually, if you just increase the amount of computation that you give the systems that are trying to do chess, it's way better than any human could ever be at trying to teach the system. And so what you're talking about, maybe you had opinions about what it meant to be a good marketing agent a year or two ago. And for us, we allow people to create a digital mind. So we had a bunch of opinions about when someone's talking to the digital mind, what does it mean? What are the possible intentions? What does it mean to, format the prompt? And we have all these opinions about things, and we've kind of gotten rid of almost all of them, where we want to make sure that the system has some guardrails, but really you just want to let it think. Make sure the task is clearly defined, give it the tools that it needs to figure it out, and then just let it do it. And I think that architecture is what's going to win over the next couple of years. And anyone here who's working on a system, they should try to set themselves up. So how can I benefit from the increase in computation and remove as many of the assumptions that I have as a human about how the system should behave?
Yeah, and I'll double down on that. I think those are the exact primitives that Anthropic's used for Claude Code. They were like, okay, what if we actually took away a lot of the tool call? I can give it access to the command line and let it develop its own tools in the moment that it needs them, instead of us trying to apply what we think is the right flow for any given task, letting it figure out the flow. And it feels a little weird, considering, at least where I come from, and I was in enterprise software for the last 10 years at a company called Okta, and everything needed to be super deterministic. We injected opinions up and down the stack on how it should flow, and you're almost like letting go a little bit. But that's the exciting part of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I think another thing that came out very recently that I would also recommend people check out is Claude Skills.
Yeah.
And that is basically how Anthropic was able to get Claude Code to do the PBTX and DocX manipulation that they release. And it was just by including these markdown files where the agent knew if it had to do something with one of these things, it just load the markdown file with the directions to how to manipulate a PowerPoint. And so this is another thing that we've made a bet, the company Delphi, on, is that LMs, the value of them over the long term is not going to be the information that they have stored in the model, but actually them as a reasoning unit. And so if you have a task that you need to do, you're not trying to ask the LM based on the things that you know, especially not Q&A with facts, because that is so prone to hallucinations and people are trying to get them to hallucinate less. So that's kind of an uphill battle. How can we use this tool to interpret and make decisions about what it should do, and then use the skills that it needs? And you can imagine the future, extend this out. You have a Cerebrus model that has 4,000 TPS, and then you have 1 million skills, and it's just making a ton of decisions about what it should be doing.
And Nick, you mentioned a second ago letting go of the reins, and it kind of dovetails into what I was thinking of asking you, Dave, on the security side of things. You've got this world where immediately right out of the gate, AI just as a whole, everyone's concerned about security. All the customers I talk to, it's always going to be top of mind, or at the very end come up, hey, wait a minute, we should probably dig into this a little. How are you determining which tool to work with when you've kind of got the double whammy here? It's not just being secure, but also providing a security tool while still moving quickly. What does that decision kind of process look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we bring a lot of, here's an example. Like, we work with some government organizations that have very high bars to get our own software into their environments. And so in doing so, we're learning not only about how do we, get certified for XYZ, like FedRAMP or something like that, we're also learning how to bring people on that journey with us. And so in terms of our tooling, we're using APIsec in order to kind of secure our environments. And then we're kind of parlaying that into, hey, can we bring another partner, like a design partner who needs to take, whether it's legacy software or new software, into a very, very safe space, like an air-gapped environment. Like, we're kind of bringing that to them in the way that we applied it to our own function. So it's like, we do a lot of dog fooding in that sense.
I was just thinking, eat your own dog food. Yep.
Yeah. And it works great because we need to produce reports. And so we kind of know what the auditors are asking or what those regulators are asking for. And so we can design those very, very tightly to the regulations, which obviously security is driven very, very strongly by. You ask developers, like, how often you're going to take these security tasks. It's when the regulators kind of make it very important. And so that's why it becomes the source of our drivers.
Yep. There's a interesting kind of switch topic here too, Sam, from something that you had brought up, the concept of the ability to add much more compute. And it's a topic right now that's been brought up from the lens of cost in that kind of aspect of how do you deal with this world, not just of internal costs, but you've got systems that are token-based, there's usage-based pricing, serverless, you pay for it as you use it. But a lot of people are used to buying things seat-based or looking at systems where I just get a license, a platform fee, and then I've got unlimited kind of access. So in this world where everything's also changing on top of that, more compute is getting added. I know you're opening up a free tier that you had mentioned earlier as well. With that coming up, with the way you're setting it up today, how do you ensure that the costs surrounding this can make sense for your COGS, for your business, while still supporting your users?
That's a great question. And also top of mind, because recently, I don't know if people saw the OpenAI Dev Day where they put up all the people who their organizations had used certain tokens. I was on the 1 trillion token. And that was one of the most embarrassing things to be publicly recognized for, because it's like, your OpenAI bill is huge. And, but I think also, I want to take a step back before I answer and just clarify what Delphi is a little bit more, because I think I did a poor job to start. But basically, we want to provide people the ability to scale themselves, because when they're not around, the things that make you uniquely you, your judgment, your knowledge, your context, those are inherently not scalable right now. And so we want to let people create a profile that's powered by a digital mind that knows how they think that they can send to people. And so, for example, I have a Delphi of myself that is delphi.ai/Sam. And I'll send it to candidates when they're interviewing for Delphi, and they can ask questions to my Delphi as my voice and all the context about me and the company to learn about the interview process and the things I care about in engineers is one example. But so the opinion we have as a company about costs is potentially somewhat extreme because we're in consumer, which is that really what you're trying to do, especially in consumer, is you're trying to fight against consumer behavior because you're trying to invent something new. And so that question of can you even do that? And can you make a product that's strong enough to be able to change the way that people share knowledge has made it such that cost is the last consideration. And so we're trying to first actually prove that people will want to use the website and want to create the Delphis. The Delphis are good. Obviously, don't make unforced errors and spend a ton of money unnecessarily, but prove that it actually works and then go and optimize the cost, which is maybe part of the reason why we burned Detroit tokens.
I didn't want to throw it at the bus. We were on a master dad. I love the story behind it. And I can extend that question over there too, because it's interesting as well to hear from the B2B side. How does this kind of come into play, knowing these spaces are going to be competitive? You've got to take this into account, not just in what you determine to build with, but how does this affect things downstream when we start going to market with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that you made a couple of points earlier around model capabilities. I think what's really interesting about where we are today is that there really doesn't need to be any new technical innovations for us to reach AGI. Like, as the models are fed more data and more compute, they get smarter. So really on like, you want to debate this a little bit?
I don't do that.
Yeah, all yours?
No, we can take it.
No, that's fine. So like, as we scale, it's like every time a new model release has had double the compute, it's gotten, I think, 3x smarter or 5x smarter. It's held up better than Moore's Law. So the way that we like to think about this is like the models are inherently going to keep getting better. And then the energy put into producing those models will also increase. So they're going to get smarter and they're going to get cheaper over time than where they are right now. So I think that if you're making bets on how much things cost today, I mean, this has happened over the last 2 years, it's been driven, down 100x in the last 2 years. So
No, go ahead, continue.
No.
I was saying it kind of fits, actually, funny enough. You got the AGI debate aside from what you said of right now from the lens of not focus on costs, change the user behavior, kind of meshes well in the concept.
That's exactly how we're thinking about it as well.
You get the usage going, model comes down, and then you build your profitability kind of out of it.
Correct.
So from the product perspective, because I run product, I think it's dream big. And I've got these awesome engineering minds who are like, I almost say something in jest, and then like a couple of days later they come back and they're doing it and I think that's incredible. So like for me, I get to kind of play in the playground of dreams, and I don't really have to, get bound by the cost, and I can outsource some of that. But at the end of the day, when the actual product gets built and it gets put in my hands, like we're always trying to make it faster and cheaper until we can actually put it in the hands of our customers. And so like as a small company, we have to be conscious of that. We can't, be releasing things to the masses, at least with our strategy, because like quickly we could kind of drown ourselves with infrastructure costs. So that's our approach to it.
Yeah. So shifting from the philosophical kind of side of things, if we look at things a bit more tactically, Nick, question for you here.
Yeah.
If you consider the RevOps space that you play in, it's massive. I mean, you can see the tower on the way here and just get an idea of the TAM from looking at that. How do you direct the organization to build what customers want, plan out sprints, road mapping, all of this, consider the right infrastructure, determine how to build it, and do so in a way when many companies building AI struggle with a common objection of, oh, we already use so-and-so, and they already do that?
It's another good question. I'll play on this joke a little bit. Anytime I pitch to a VC and they ask me what my TAM is, I say, look at the biggest tower in San Francisco. It's the Salesforce Tower. And I say, we're going to tear that thing down brick by brick. So that's an aside, but it's kind of funny. I think tech is really funny because it repeats itself over and over again. We run through these cycles. So, we had the dot-com boom in the 2000s, then everyone had this, on-premise thing, and we were like, let's move it to the cloud. And now like cloud software and software as a service is dead. And, we're switching to this new AI native wave. And it's really just like looking at markets, and they get rebuilt, let's say every 10 years or so. So I think from where I sit, and when we founded the company, we're very lucky in that we started the business post AI boom. So I truly get to consider myself an AI native, sales and marketing system, where, when you look at some of the incumbents in the space, primarily that big tower, as I like to talk about, they're retrofitting that system for, AI. So when I think about product roadmaps and how we build things, yes, I can glean some insights around what they've done and how they did it before and why they're going to be poorly transitioned to, build stuff here. But if I do that, like I miss out on, drastic innovation and making, ultimately what the most important thing is making your customers' lives better. So we really treat kind of this new wave as like, yes, we have a lot of learnings from the SaaS boom, but today we're looking at building systems for systems. And in the past, we were building systems for humans. And so we really try to take, our product roadmap and every feature we build and look at it as like, okay, are we building this for humans to click through? Are we building this to, interact with other agents someday? Is it a middle ground? But we're much more, I'd say, customer-led in the features that we build in the roadmap that's at hand than we have been in prior years past, where you look at competition, you're like trying to get feature parity and all that. Because if you just build feature parity in this day, you're going to get killed.
Sam, I'd like to extend that same kind of thing to you as well, especially considering from the lens of the scale you're working at, the OpenAI trillion token concept, all of that. How do you look at that infrastructure of what do you need to consider as we're making decisions, not just for the now, but knowing where we're going?
I think one of the biggest decisions that we made was something that I was talking about a little bit previously, was completely redoing the mind architecture from scratch to be the least opinionated possible, to have an agent that has a tool that has tools, one of which being a knowledge graph of the person's representation. I think one of the things, also an interesting point that you made, Nick, about incumbents versus startups is, and thinking about how we want to build in the direction of the company. Another thing that I recommend everyone here reads is a book called 7 Powers by Hamilton Helmer. And in that he talks about every company that's going to be successful and have durable power over a long period of time needs to have at least one, ideally multiple of those powers. And one of them is counter-positioning. It says, how can I position myself against an incumbent? And one of the main things is that you have to make sure that the business equation for how they get revenue is going to be negative if they compete against you. So will it be harmful for them and their main source of revenue stream, if they try and do whatever you're trying to do? And so for us, that is actually true, because we're making a profile that lets you pull in data from LinkedIn, YouTube, podcasts, all these different things. And you've seen Mark Zuckerberg talk about, and they released like the WhatsApp AI. I don't know if you guys saw last year, where it was the Tom Brady and Snoop Dogg, but it wasn't actually them, and stuff like this. And they've talked about doing creator tools Instagram, but they'll never let them leave the Meta universe. But people want portability with their digital mind. So we think about through the lens of a bunch of these, multiple of these powers. And so other ones that are important is brand. For us, how can we make sure that people trust us with their digital legacy? Because if it's a profile that represents them, and the example that they use in the book is Tiffany. Like Tiffany charges 30% more for their diamonds, even though it's the same diamond, just because they have the brand. And then another one is network effects. And so if everyone is on Delphi and someone tries to make a competitor company, then people are not going to switch because they're already there. Like that's why people have been tried and failed so many times to disrupt LinkedIn, because their network is so incredibly strong. I think they're going to surpass 1 billion profiles soon. That's fucking insane. So I don't know if I'm not supposed to curse in this panel. But that also drives a lot of our decisions, where we're trying to think through the lens of how can we build the brand? How can we make sure the decisions we're making are counter-positioned against incumbents? And then how can we get to the network as quickly as possible?
I'll kind of double down on this from the SaaS side. So inherently within Steam, we don't require a lot of users because, it's an AI seller, AI marketer. So we actually pitch like less people need to be in the product than before. So if you think about traditional SaaS models, like it was per seat, per user, per month. So like that is one instance where like if Salesforce is like, okay, we're going to build, agent force, and you need less people in Salesforce, that inherently cannibalizes their business model. So they're, encouraged not to do stuff like that. So really doubling down on the concept here that you just said.
Yeah, I really like the point about counter positioning and pricing, because pricing is a very, very powerful tool in the go-to-market motion, where we do see deals where we go in there and we are against competitors who are pricing by the seat. And for extra large enterprises, or maybe for extremely small companies, like that pricing doesn't make any sense for them. And so like outcome-based pricing is something that people have been throwing around a lot. It's something that is very interesting to think about, because it really means that if you can save them more time, you've earned that money from that result in that case. So I love it.
Just one quick thing on the outcomes. Also, something that was being thrown around where people are using this as evidence of this being an AI bubble was that 95% of paid pilots have failed. There's a study that was released, I forget by who released it, but if you actually went in and you read why did the 5% of pilots succeed, which I think is always the interesting thing, is what was different. It was because there were clear outcomes when the pilot was started. And so a lot of these companies are, especially if you're dealing with large enterprises, they're, CEOs like, we need an AI strategy, get some AI tools, and then they buy them and no one uses them because they don't have them tied to outcomes, and then they churn. And so I definitely agree that is an interesting pricing model to be explored.
I'm seeing the same too with the customers we work with. The idea of basing things based on the outcome, what are the results you get? And it's funny too, because I remember another board meetings in the past, not at Pinecone, but being told you've got to just set this up for access, charge for access, not for use, all this. And it brings up an interesting point to get kind of even more tactical though on the building side, less on pricing. But what is something you've each been told by either investors, peers, folks you've worked with in the past on this is what it takes or what you need to do when building AI and agents that you just found in practice to simply be untrue?
Simply untrue about building AI. So like, I come from the security lens. There's a lot of talk about what changes in security with MCPs and all of this access into my data. If you take a look, there's actually a really good presentation. I can't remember who did it. They had the Scooby-Doo scene. And it's at the end when they're revealing the villain, they've got the dude with the mask on and it says MCP on the mask, and they rip it off and it says API. So like, if you kind of think of it that way, the security becomes a little bit less scary and a little bit less daunting. Like, you're giving access to these systems to go and access your data, but they're still accessing them in the same manner. But I think you might find that changes is going to be the volume of that. And so in that, you're kind of, you need to think about different strategies. As you're watching things happen, doing this watch, detect, block motion may not be the magic bullet for the security strategy against those applications. Like, you have to take multiple angles, the proactive angle, the reactive angle, in order to kind of get those same outcomes. So anyway.
So like, wildly the advice about building products and startups over the last decade or so is build something super narrow that almost looks like a feature, take that feature to market, and then build a wedge and then expand out. I think there's been kind of two shifts recently. One, it's like really easy to build software right now, pretty much across the entire stack. So if you're very feature oriented in your mind, like you've been in the last 10 years, like your competition pool is very wide. So what my, like, I'd say like counterintuitive take is like, we have to build deeper into use cases and workflows that you're trying to solve it, and more specifically problems for the customer. So we actually like look at, automations that we want to solve for and think about the end-to-end automation and try to build that with an agent, not just like step one in the flow. So for an example for us, more specifically, we have like two sides of our product. One is this like kind of observability element of like, hey, you have all these companies, and you have all these people that you're trying to sell to. What's going on in them that makes this the right time to sell to them? Okay, kind of like, again, the Datadog corollary here. When we stopped there, it wasn't enough. There's a lot of companies out there that can aggregate some data and throw some summaries on them. When we started to think about kind of the action layer of, remediating that action when we see an important moment and running campaigns, this is kind of back to also the ROI portion here, we were able to tie to a specific outcome. So instead of just sharing insight, but taking action and tying to an outcome, we like found a lot more product market fit. So I think like my counter take here is like, go narrow is not really applicable anymore. A lot of folks can go narrow and build really surface level features. You kind of have to build deeper into spaces now than ever before.
The main thing that people, VCs, videos on YouTube about how to build companies, main thing that I think is wrong is talking to your customers. And the reason why I think that that's wrong is because when you are trying to build something new, you're trying to put something in the world that people don't know should exist yet. And a lot of people aren't imaginative or creative. And so if you show it to them, it's not going, like, people don't know what they want. You have to show them what they want. And I think a great analogy to this is Christopher Nolan. When he makes a movie, he's not doing previews with the audience and saying, what do you guys think of this movie before he shoots it? No, he writes the script and then he shoots it. And so one of the best sayings that came out of the first couple months of the company from our lead investor, Keith Boy, is shoot the movie. And so I just say that, we say that over and over to ourselves at the company, is don't ask people what they want. If we're doing something new, we got to show it to them.
You have to read in between the lines what people need.
Wait, sorry. What company have you found? DoorDash. Okay.
Yes. It's not that you don't need to talk to your customers. You need to read in between the lines of what they're asking.
Well, so I think I totally agree that you have to put out the...
But it's not that you don't solve your customers. Of course, you talk to them, but you understand in between the lines of what their needs, and then you put it there. If you don't talk to their customers, you got to screw up.
Dash Pass subscriber here, so thank you. We just had Stanley Tang, the co-founder of DoorDash, one of the other co-founders. There's five of you guys. Also, what was your name?
Eli.
Sam, nice to meet you. In our office, we had this interactive podcast called The Library of Minds, where you can go and you can see conversations with people, VCs, founders, and then you can ask their Delphi follow-up questions. And Stanley's episode was last week, and it was very good. I totally agree with you. I think the caveat on this is like when you're trying to first put it out there, you're trying to decide what you need to put out. And then once it's out there, you want to observe people's reactions to it and then understand the things you need to change. But you definitely don't want, in my opinion, to ask people for what they need. Okay.
Well, it's an interesting way to kind of caveat, because I know we were playing the mic juggling a second ago, but I'm actually going to be handing it back to you for this one. Touching the bed. I'm actually very excited about our founder, Ido Liberty, creating a Delphi himself coming up. And so he's currently in the process of that. I could say first and foremost, we had never thought of the concept of a Delphi. Putting it out there is what got us engaged and got us excited. To that point as well, from this now being created, with the way you've architected Delphi, what was the hardest part of creating that kind of RAG capability or that system at this level of scale? And this could be oriented around the back end, the user experience aspect of creating the agent when it's done in a way they had never seen before. And how did you solve?
I think the kind of along the lines of the point Nick was making about doing things generally first, one of the things that we start off when we first made the company is instead of trying to produce a specific representation of a person, which is probably what would be the easiest thing, is when you first start off. And we started off by making a consumer platform where we made versions of Andrew Huberman and Esther Perel and these different people, and they all sent us cease and desist. We're like, don't do that. And so instead, we had started by making a system that was generalized, where you put in their content, and then it learns from that what are the things this person cares about, how do they speak, etc. And so I would say that's maybe one of the biggest differences between us and some of the other people who have tried to do something similar to this is people have been able to get better results for a specific person because it's easier to make like someone, if they sat down for 2 weeks and really tried to just make specifically Edo the best possible version they could probably do a better job than just the vanilla Delphi when it comes out of training. Hopefully not anymore, but definitely a year ago. And our big focus has been trying to make it so that the general system produces good outputs. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but
it does. I think so. Anything to add there? No. I want to be cautious on time as well. So I'm actually going to take this next one and kind of make it for everyone here. So Dave, we'll start with you on it. This actually was originally designed for you, Nick, with the concept of revenue being the top focus, but to spread it out, one of the top topics right now, and this had come up with what you had brought up regarding the outcome component, same thing you had talked about before, is in these systems, outcome is the focus. How do you measure that? How do you get a calculation of ROI when something is so new, when something has not been done before, and use this to justify, yes, we're going for this? So in that kind of concept, how you worked with each of the teams or the customers you work with to show them, if you're using the system, this is the results you're getting, this is how you measure it, and here's how to prove the ROI behind it.
Yeah, so for us, there's, I would say, very tangible costs on the security side, and those tangible costs would be something like a annual pen test. You hire a firm, comes in and it assesses your applications. When you kind of compare, though, apples to apples, and you put yourself on the same plane as those directly competitive, maybe alternatives, I think that the customer loses out on a lot of the incredibly beneficial other aspects of it, because you have to help them understand the major gains that your solution, even if it comes out to the same price or very similarly priced, what we find is that time in the day is something that's very, very hard to create. So like getting more people in to test more often it almost becomes a silly calculation when you start to try to model this person who works for a $200,000 salary, who's a very seasoned penetration tester. And so it becomes difficult in a way. What we find is going after some of the more intangible value. And I'll give you an example. We had a CTO implement automated API security testing. And for him, there was one thing that contributed to the value and the decision to continue the contract year after year. When he gets to his annual pen test, which he's required to do, zero engineering disruption. There is no roadmap shift when security comes knocking and says, we need to make sure that we're compliant in all of these areas. They get to continue to innovate as quickly as they have been because they've almost shrunk that security responsibility so small to every release that the linearity of their business becomes the value driver of this tool that they've implemented. So it's not always tangible. It could be slightly intangible. And that story is kind of an example of how that might manifest.
Yeah, so for us, we really think about ROI in really 3 different levels. And I think this is historically how it's always been judged. So level 1, which I call the weakest, is increases in productivity. So I think that a lot of companies right now that are building AI tools, they're like, look how much faster you can do X, Y, and Z. In my experience, that's been like a really weak proof of ROI, because you're now judging like, okay, now that you gave everyone so much time back, are they doing more productive things, or should have taken that long to begin with? And it's really arbitrary. So level 1, increase productivity. Level 2 is really, I think, when you start to get to some more value, and we think about that as cost savings. So can you save the business money by doing what you're doing better than the current state? I like to think of that as, somewhat weak, but better than productivity. And then the third phase in where we try to live every day, and it kind of goes with what you just said, but can you enable the business to do something they were unable to do before? And AI should really live there, right? And for you, that was, automated pen testing, so it didn't disrupt anyone at the company. That's enabling them to do something that was never thought of. When you get to that level, you can, in theory, charge whatever the hell you want. And so we really try to operate in that phase. And I think there's this idea of North Star metrics at companies that have been around for forever. So like Uber was like number of rides per month, Slack's is number of messages sent, per active user per day. For us, it's like, how much pipeline can we generate for you at the company without a human involved? So if we're generating you dollars without your heads, spending time on it, that's enabling you something that you've never done before. So we try to live in that level 3.
I'm a huge fan of that framework. The only thing that I'll add on to that is almost always in products, like the power loss shows up everywhere. And I think in product usage, and the reason that people come back and retain in products, it shows up as well, where there's usually one thing that has a massive outsized impact on the success of the product. One flow, or one you're talking about, there's one specific thing that the CTO likes. And so we're really right now trying to figure out and continue to iterate on what is that flow going to be, and how do we just make it incredibly simple to do over and over again. And I think if you look at products that become successful over a long period of time, generally there's a couple things or maybe one thing that has an outsized impact versus like a sum of a bunch of features.
Well, folks, I want to make sure we save enough time for Q&A with everyone here. The last things I want to say is, one, thank you so much for joining us today and doing this. The second is probably the question everyone's been expecting here, but to the two of you here, why Pinecone with your charity? And Dave, as the sub jumping in, I'll even throw you the hard one. I'll give you the time to wait, though. Why not yet Pinecone?
Well, I feel like we should have had, now that I know that there's the co-founder for a public company here, he should have been up here on the panel. But the reason why I chose Pinecone is because one of the ways I think you can best measure the success of an infrastructure or database tool is how often you think about it, or how often you have to go into the dashboard and do something. And with Pinecone, that's basically never. We set it up and it just works, and it's fast and it doesn't really go down ever. And so that's kind of all you can ask for in a tool. So it's been fantastic. We set it up when we first started the company 3 years ago, and then we just continued to use it. And I would say one more thing that's kept us around is that the team's very high quality. So all the people I've interacted with have been great. And when Jeff Bezos started Amazon, one of the things he talked about was, what are the immovable forces of nature around this business? People are always going to want more selection. They want it faster, and they want the good prices. And when I met Ido, he was like, our customers want it to be fast and it to be inexpensive and for it to be reliable. And we're going to continue to do all those things. And so it's all like the costs have also gone down from that since we started. So.
Yeah, I can really echo those 3 points. Sport's incredible. We onboarded Pinecone, pretty much when we founded a company 3 years ago, and been with them ever since then. And I think from, what I've really noticed about the actual product itself is the funniness of what you just described. One, we never think about it, but 2, we've increased our scale a lot in the product, and our price hasn't, really inflated that much throughout it. It was specifically thanks to the serverless and all that stuff. But I don't see us moving on Pinecone anytime in the future. So echoing my happiness here.
Why not Pinecone?
Not yet.
Why not yet? Easy answer. I mean, AWS startup credits is the answer. And so, hopefully we'll get, maybe through Seam or something like that, connected with a really great salesperson who might be able to enable without a human ever being involved. But no, in just, I'm not quite the builder and decider of technologies. And so, I'm more on the product side, and
I still will not be getting more emails than standard uploaded than they came.
Yeah.
Well, cool. With that, thank you to everyone here as well. I'd like to open it up for questions. And my request being is, if you have a question, please start with your name, what you're working on, and I'll repeat the question from there.
There's a lot of different levels of people that are in their journey for agentic workflows and agents. Go to the beginning. I want to build an agent. What does that mean? What are the types of agents you should think about? What are the different frameworks they can use? End-to-end, agent to agent, build it myself. Like, it's a very complicated world. Can you build a little bit of a heuristic around think about navigating?
Yeah, I can start with this. It's a great question. Has everyone seen the I guess it's somewhat of a meme now, but the images of Tesla's or SpaceX's Raptor 1, Raptor 2, Raptor 3 engines and what the first version looked like, second version versus third one? Well, the first one looks like all discombobulated and it barely looks like an engine. The second one kind of looks a little bit more polished, a lot of pipes on the outside. And then the third one really looks super clean, almost futuristic. And now they designed and built this engine. And we almost like think about the way that we go about building agents in a very similar process. So one, we start with like the problem or the task we're trying to automate. And then we actually will go out and try to see if we can automate it, like you said, with an N8N, or maybe throw some like light engineering resources at it to see what that flow looks like, really map out kind of the blueprint end to end of the different steps. And then we will go test it in a lot of ways in the market. And, you know, we've had things that have been really well received and things that didn't. And the things that do get well received, we go to Raptor 2. And then, you know, much of our product now that's customer facing is in that kind of Raptor 3 phase. But like, I think when everyone wants to go build an agent, they're like, let's go build this perfect agent that automates everything indefinitely forever. And it's like, no, maybe you can stitch a couple things together to get a portion of the workflow done and, you know, hack some engineering resources together to do it.
I would say to just talk about specific frameworks. Also, the simplest way to think about agents is literally just tools in a loop, where you have a system prompt and then it has things that it can do. And they might be functions, it might be LLM calls, it might be an API call called MCP that hits a server. But really it is just deciding, should I do something? And then does it. And then the LLM again says, should I do something different, over and over again until it decides it's done. Or you do a trillion tokens. And I would say a specific framework that we've been using is Pydantic AI. It's that Pydantic is very good. Their team is very good. Their tool that they've released along with Pydantic called Logfire that automatically instruments is very good. And we've started to use them a ton. And I think we're just going to continue to use them more. And also Logfire is kind of a generalized OTel client that you can pipe your OTel records to. So we've started to actually do more and more and creating full distributed traces that then include all of the agentic logs for all the decisions it made and the tools that it called. So I don't know how you think.
Yeah, and you'd said go all the way back to the beginning. I mean, like everybody here seems to be like super technical and working, but like I use Claude Desktop an incredible amount, and I use Claude Code an incredible amount, and I use it for non-coding use cases. I'm a product guy. But if you can kind of structure the directory in the right way and you can give it jobs, I would say Claude Code is a amazing foray into the world of agents, how agents think. And then you can go from there with opinions or even just a little bit of base knowledge into all of those other types of frameworks. Like you try the ones off the shelf, like Crew AI or like some of those. They also have, you know, opinions on how all of that should work. But like kind of looking across them and picking what you like and what you don't, I think that there's merit to all of them.
Right. Tell a quick story and then ask a question. Also on that question, your question, if people have not read Anthropic's paper, Building Effective Agents, I still think that's the best starting point. So my name is Tatiana. I worked at Dell a long time ago, feels like. And I'm the co-founder and CEO of Wayfound. One thing that I wanted to mention is that I think you're both right in a way. Like when we started the company, we talked to a lot of enterprises. I've been at AWS and Salesforce as well. And we talked to a lot of enterprises about why won't you launch agents? And one of the things they said, especially the business users, the owners of honestly the agentic workflows, I don't trust this technology. It's a black box. I need it to be more deterministic. So what do? Do you ignore what they say? No, or do you try to make it more deterministic? No, even though some people are trying, I think it will fail. But what you do is you really listen to what's behind that, right? You read between the lines. You say, why are they saying that? They're saying that because they're afraid. They don't have direct access to this technology. They don't understand it. And ultimately, they are responsible. So we built an AI agent supervisor. That's what we do. And one of the things that we found, and now I'm getting to my question, one of the things that we found is that business users, especially when it comes to their brand, are very, very worried and concerned about having that sit in a black box somewhere and not being directly able to control how the agents are actually showing up, like in terms of marketing, right? How does the marketing team directly control the agents and what they're writing? Can they write the directives? Can they write the evals? Do they actually have the power without having to get into the engineering queue or Slack an engineer or somebody to figure out how to control the agent directly? And the same thing, I think, for Delphi, right? If I were, to create my own AI avatar, how can I control the brand? How can I control the language that it uses without, again, having to go to an engineer and do that and be able to know with complete certainty that it's representing me and adhering to this brand, to the way that I want to represent myself?
I personally think a ton about this, but almost through a little different lens of product design itself. Like, I think, products historically have been designed and how you're discussing them, specifically Salesforce. It's for humans to click through an application and guide them through certain experiences to extract information out of them and for them to improve processes. I think where we are with agents right now are very similar. Humans want to see everything because they don't trust it. And so we built a lot of observability in the tool. What actions is it taking? Do you want to prove them before the action is happening? Are you writing the copy? Are we writing the copy? But we kind of joke a lot internally right now that we have about the idea of config. And if everyone's watched the show Silicon Valley, when they released Pied Piper, there's this screenshot of the image of what the application looks like, and there's thousands of buttons on it from a config perspective, because engineers love config and all of that. But I think, like, as we start to trust these systems more, we actually think of it as like we're going to end up removing a lot of the UI from the product over time, and you're going to start to have less control, but only after you've trusted it and it's had desired outcomes that you want. So I think, I don't want to say that what's happening right now around deterministic nature and, the ability to control what the AI doing is going to be what the future looks like. Because, even with Claude right now, with Claude Code, like, their whole thing is like, give it up to the AI release, kind of as I talked at the beginning. So I think, yes, we design right now for the humans to have control, but over time that's going to slightly go away.
Yeah, I would say agree with a lot of those things. I think what we've tried to do over the course of the last 3 years is progressively remove the options that people have to configure it.
Yep.
Not because we're trying to give people less options, but because people don't actually want them. The ideal situation, I think a good analogy I just thought of as he was talking, is being on a basketball team or any sports team, and you're trying to decide you should pass the ball to your teammate, and you're kind of judging. Sometimes, I mean, at least when I was growing up, like, has this person, lost the ball or fucked up in the past sometimes? And so you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. But with purchasing and using AI systems right now, the answer isn't in the future going to be, okay, I don't pass the ball to anybody. It's going to be, I want to be able to just trust it. And so how can we, like, the bar is actually just needs to work straight up.
Sure. I don't mean the config. I mean the monitoring. So it's not about, it's like not having a referee. And then the basketball is like, people are hitting each other in the head with the basketball and nobody knows. Right?
Yeah.
They're like, wait, what is my other need doing out there in the world?
Yeah.
I don't have any visibility. And how do I tell it to stop doing that?
Right.
Sure.
It's the referee, not.
Okay, got it. Love the extended metaphor. The So what we have is a conversations page where you can read all the conversations your digital mind has, but people aren't going to sit there and read through all of it. So instead, we have alerts where it'll go to your insights dashboard where it's like this, you weren't able to answer this question, or we had low confidence in this answer, and then you can click on it and answer it. And then for all future times, it will be answered. So we're trying to build feedback loops in where you can update the knowledge of your Delphi if it doesn't know how to do something. But the ideal situation is that as you continue to train it, then it just continues to learn and iterate. So you asked it a question and then it gives you an answer. You're like, that wasn't very good. And then you say why, and then it learns. And so there's an element of you talking to yourself to train it. And then also, how do I get alerted when something bad is happening?
I have a question over. Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm an engineer at an insurance tech company called Different Insurance. And my question is around like what agents mean and how you think about it. So agents are very trendy right now, and I find that a lot of people use agents just to refer to AI, just to have de-anonymize. My company, other engineers, like they run an LLM call, they change to another LLM call, and like, oh, this is my agents. And I found it very confusing. Like, it doesn't really mean anything to me. And so I'm wondering if that's something I'm wondering how you all think about that. Are you also just kind of like, okay, with people just calling AI agents? You feel like the distinction matters, like when you're talking about it, experience?
So funny enough, I'll actually jump in to start this here. What I see across our customer base when I'm talking with folks, where the difference between RAG, agent, just using the LLM, whatever it may be, comes into play, is what is done with the output. So you could consider that just being a couple calls in the example you provided there. Where I'm seeing the term agent really start to stick and everyone kind of gravitating towards is when there's something generated from an LLM, whether that's a direct question via context window, via RAG, and there's an output there. That output doesn't go direct to a human. So it's not a, here's your answer, here's the reply, but there's a step taken from what that output is in terms of a action, either through a system, through into another call somewhere else to take a separate step and plug this back into something else. But where the output goes and then an action is taken, that's what I've started to see kind of become the norm around us.
I loved your answer before. It was like, it's a collection of skills and tools, like on a loop kind of.
Yeah, tools in a loop.
Yeah, better way to put it.
I do think there's a lot of marketing speak out there, though, where people are just building Zapier or NAN style workflows and calling them agents. And I don't like, we really distinguish between those kind of three lines, which is like, is this a single shot prompt? You're just getting question answer. Is it a workflow that is, traditionally been deterministic with maybe one LM step, or is it kind of this like loop that these guys are talking about? So that's how I segment the three.
Thanks, guys. One more question here.
Hey, I'm Shiva. I'm the CTO of Aloe. We are building like personal AI for social media content creators. So my question is more towards Sam, and like, I really resonate with what you said. When you're in consumer, we are trying to build like a beam category, get people to use a new thing. You shouldn't be, a cost is maybe not the highest priority thing you think about. But at the same time, like in today's world, like the cost is directly proportional to latency. So how do you think about that? Like, because what we see is that you can use the best models and they do give the best outputs, but there's a latency cost to that. And to change to that, if you have explored that, like between prompting and fine-tuning and reinforcement learning, which work the best for you, if you have gone down that one.
So I guess two-part question. The first is around how do you balance the consideration of using the most intelligent models with the fact that those are usually inherently more latent sensitive. And then the other part of the question is, do you use anything like fine-tuning or RL to change the models? I'll answer the second one first, which is we don't do any fine-tuning right now. And I would recommend that everyone here doesn't do it unless you have a very specific use case where it's narrow and you're trying to save money. I would say that's usually save money or latency, and you want to have a fixed cost where you have something that you want to throw on a a fireworks GPU or something over a long period of time. But a lot of times, any task that you're trying to do will become better, cheaper, faster by the time that you figure out how to have a good data set to fine tune a model. So that's usually, at least in the past couple of years, has been a waste of time. And then also, if you fine tune a model, usually it retards its ability to do other things and instruction following more generally. So I think those are some considerations that have prevented us from doing it. And then for latency or versus cost, I would say there are two companies that sort of break this paradigm, which is Grok and Cerebras. It's Grok with a Q. And those are companies that have created novel chip architectures that do inference way faster and generally can have whatever the best open source model is that's come out on them. And so those are less smart than the flagship models of the research labs, but we utilize those in a lot of our real-time use cases when possible. But other than that, usually it's worth the latency for the better intelligence, except when it was 4.5. 4.5 was very, very slow.
All right. With that, I know we're a little bit over time. So again, one more. All right, last one, then we got to wrap up.
Hey, I'm Dada, and I'm a ex-DoorDash driver. And my question to you guys is: there's a lot of questions whether or not vector search is really better than grep. Do you guys use a combination of two, and which use cases have you guys found is like most optimal for like grep versus just vector search?
I love this question.
Are you saying grab? Oh, yeah.
So there's like this is coming from like how Claude Code does it.
Yeah.
Search. Yeah.
This is very fascinating. I would actually say that a lot of people might overcomplicate their infrastructure choices. So I would say you definitely need vector databases if you're trying to do some sort of semantic search where it's the meaning behind things versus grep is you're just looking for character matching. But I would say that don't use graph databases, use Postgres. I take this as an opportunity to say that sometimes people do actually try to overcomplicate, and it has become very simple to use Pinecone with the serverless create new indexes. So there's not really a huge overhead to spinning that up. I don't know if anyone has anything else.
Well, folks, thank you again. We'll be wrapping up here. We'll be hanging around if you got any other questions, and keep an eye out for more events. We'll be setting more up. We appreciate all your time. Thank you.
Thank you.